Hello, and welcome to another episode of Rooted to Truth. I'm Mackenzie Dickinson, your host here on the Rooted to Truth podcast, and today we will be concluding our three-part series on liberty by addressing the question, how do we preserve and pass down the blessing of liberty to the upcoming generations? In our discussion, we will be analyzing the stewardship Americans have in maintaining the blessing of governmental liberty. More specifically, how Christian Americans can be exercising their faith through civic engagement and societal influence. So, without further ado, let's get started. In the last episode, we covered the concept of liberty by diving into its origin and application as it relates to the United States of America. First, we discovered that liberty begins internally and is directly given to all who put their trust in the Lord Jesus Christ. The internal liberation from sin we receive when we transfer our trust into the care of Christ is then made manifest in how we conduct ourselves in life. This reality was the cornerstone to the nation-building process undertaken in America's founding. The men who worked and fought diligently so that the American people could exercise their liberty freely built our entire governing system upon that cornerstone, which is Christ. These framers also frequently warned of the dangers in becoming negligent in securing such a great blessing. In fact, it's one of the main reasons why the Constitution of the United States was even drafted and ratified. The preamble to our Constitution lists 6 reasons for its establishment, and one of which is to, and I quote, secure the blessing of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. To understand why it was crucial for a governing document to be established that secures liberty to a people willing and desiring to defend their freedoms, we need to become familiar with the deterrence of freedom and how we can become galvanized for the defense of it through civic engagement. The gift of liberty was not acquired without extensive bloodshed. Not only did God's only Son die for us, but thousands of soldiers have laid their lives down in the name of freedom. To put things into perspective, I'd like to read to you some statistics from a fact sheet produced by the Department of Veterans Affairs. According to this, the American Revolution cost approximately 4,500 American lives. The Civil War cost 550,000 American lives. World War I took 116,000 American lives, and World War II took 405,000. That being said, we can't just enjoy the blessing of liberty. We must actively engage and participate in advocating for the nation's best interest, lest Christ died in vain and the fallen soldiers in his shadow. So, what is civic engagement? It's running for school board, showing up to vote, and electing leaders for office who demonstrate a reverence for God and a respect for his people. It's also speaking up when leaders are establishing laws in opposition to God's word and are acting in an authoritarian manner. Revelation 1 verse 6 says that we are kings and priests to God because self-government has been reinstated. Therefore, we should be aware of the responsibility that comes with our stewardship over civil and natural liberties. I'd go as far as saying that neglecting civic engagement, which allows for freedom to prosper, is to disregard the immense sacrifice of Christ. I've heard some Christians say that they don't feel the need to engage in civil government because their citizenship is in heaven. Some even argue that the Bible's prophecies about the destruction of nations will be fulfilled anyway, so what's the point? Yes, Bible prophecy is going to come to pass, but because we listen and participate in God's great plan, not because we sit back and watch without action. If he didn't want for us to engage, then we wouldn't be alive. If Christians don't actively fight for their values through civic influence, then the enemy automatically has the upper hand. Am I limiting the power of God by saying that? Absolutely not. In fact, if we stand by idly and do nothing, we make light of such a magnificent gift. Liberty was so precious and valuable to God that He purchased it for us with the blood of His own Son. I've also heard many Christians state that they avoid things of the political nature because they feel it is a dirty business. This reasoning reminds me of Acts 10, where God revealed to Peter how all things were clean and acceptable for consumption. Starting in Acts 10, verse 9, it says Peter went up on the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. Then he became hungry and wanted to eat. He fell into a trance and saw heaven opened and an object like a great sheet bound at the four corners descending to him and let down to the earth. In it were all kinds of four-footed animals of the earth, wild beasts, creeping things, and birds of the air. And a voice came to him, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat." But Peter said, "Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything common or unclean." An answer was given to Peter, saying, "What God has cleansed, you must not call common." This was more than God just expanding Peter's grocery list. God was actually revealing to Peter that the gospel was for all people and needed to be the source for cultural influence in every facet. God was encouraging Peter to get involved in what naturally seemed unclean to him. See, God has ordained three institutions, those being marriage, government, and the church. I don't believe for a moment that God has ordained three institutions, yet asks us only to engage in two of them. He ordained them because he knows how those three areas of life are going to determine the spiritual state of a nation and its people. Charles Finney, a minister during the Second Great Awakening, stated, "The church must take a right ground in regard to politics. Politics are part of a religion in a country as this. And Christians must do their duty to their country as a part of their duty to God. God will bless or curse a nation according to the course Christians take in politics." If you are hesitant in becoming civically engaged, I ask you this. If you would not refrain from getting married or attending church, why would you refrain from casting a vote at the ballot box? Why would you refrain from running for school board or demanding that your local representatives oppose certain bills? There are countless examples of the importance of civic engagement in the Bible. Daniel, King David, Jeremiah, and more were actively partaking in the affairs of government in order to be godly influences. As kings and priests to God, our consent is given to government establishments, and all the authority trusted into their care is directly granted by us. How we give consent is through voting for political leaders and their bills. Unfortunately, we have gone from electing statesmen to politicians who selfishly seek to line their pockets rather than promote the liberties of their fellow citizens. But who is to blame for this? Quite honestly, it's our own fault. For far too long, we have bought into the lie of the enemy, which says to avoid getting involved in the governing affairs of the nation. Because of our lack of biblical influence, the governing systems have become polluted with corrupt leaders who promote demonic practices and ways of life. God gave us instruction as to how to elect leaders in Exodus 18, verse 21. The scriptures tell us that we shall select from all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers. Somewhere over the course of America's history, the church grew sleepy and took a rest from standing watch at the gates of the land of liberty. And now we see our leaders selling the soul of the nation and the interest of its people to foreign entities, both in the spiritual and natural realms. We can no longer be so ignorant as to believe that the Constitution will protect the people from tyranny. Founding Father John Francis Mercer said, "It is a great mistake to suppose that the paper we are to propose will govern the United States. It is the men whom it will bring into the government and interest they have in maintaining it that are to govern them. The paper will only mark out the mode and the form. Men are the substance and must do the business." Proverbs 29, verse 2 even states, "When the righteous increase, the people rejoice, but when a wicked man rules, people groan." Good laws are useless if you have bad leaders because bad intentions have no regard for the rule of law. When leaders have no respect for God, they will have even less respect for his people. That's why the most effective warfare today is cultural warfare by means of legislation and indoctrination. If leaders with wicked hearts can come into power, they will manipulate their ways in the governing system so that corrupt laws are enacted, which, when put into practice, will pervert the culture and disperse misinformation. It's easy for leaders to get away with their selfish agendas when the people are blind to their natural states of liberty. A good place to start is by educating yourself on what natural liberty truly is. This was a topic we covered in episode 3, and if you'll remember, in the 1828 dictionary, liberty is defined as being both natural and civil. Natural liberty, of course, is irrefutable and irrevocable by any governing authorities because its source is not temporal in origin. Natural liberty is directly given by God. The definition for natural liberty specifically states that it is a state of exemption from the control of others and from positive laws and the institutions of social life. That's a short yet powerful sentence. Our natural liberties can't be touched by others, positive laws, or social influences. The term positive law is especially interesting upon doing legal term research. The definition actually relates to the philosophy of positivism, which we covered back in episode 1. Positivism is the ideology that everything in existence can be proven and verified through trial and analysis. This philosophy promotes seeking out the proof of reality in order to come up with fixed evidence. As it relates to law, positivism states that morality and religion should stand separate from laws that govern, since, in their eyes, an individual's morality and religion fluctuates from person to person and cannot be verified as being consistent across the board. They therefore conclude that law should have nothing to do with the involvement of a supreme being. That ideology dangerously translates into legislation through positive law. Essentially, positive law refers to the laws made by leaders in positions of authority at any given time. The problem is that this form of legislation does not regard a higher authority ruling over government and is not structured to take into consideration a leader's accountability to God. Natural liberty is exempt from the jurisdiction of positive law. The legal dictionary puts it in these terms: positive laws are those created by lawmakers to govern various aspects of society. These laws cannot step on those natural rights held by each person. The Constitution was designed not to grant rights as those rights are understood to be inherent by birth, but to prevent the government from taking away those rights. The excerpt goes on to quote Patrick Henry when he stated that the Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government, lest it come to dominate our lives and interests. Positive laws and civil liberty are enacted by governing authority, and its structure serves the purpose of governing areas of society, but it cannot ever legitimately violate the natural rights endowed to each individual by God. That being said, it's essential that we seek to educate ourselves and the upcoming generations regarding these things. If we fail to actively participate and vocalize our beliefs as biblical citizens, we will cease to have even a trace of freedom. A nation whose people don't understand and value natural liberty will not successfully safeguard civil liberty for the generations to come. Furthermore, a nation whose people are ignorant to the sacrifices made for liberty to be ensured will not know how to vote and engage civically for liberty's sake. Voting has always been our path towards securing the blessing, but now we have come to a point where voter integrity is questioned. Although it's no wonder when the integrity of our governing leadership is even more uncertain. But how can such an issue be addressed if the very means by which was previously used as the solution is now the problem itself? There comes a point where people decide to take action when grievances are not addressed. Now, an initiation of violent means is not the answer. Even the Bible reminds us that vengeance belongs to God. However, civil disobedience to governments opposing righteousness at times is warranted. For example, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego civilly disobeyed King Nebuchadnezzar when he demanded the people bow down to his golden idol. Another example can be seen in Exodus 1 when midwives in Egypt disobeyed Pharaoh's command to kill all baby boys. When it comes to civil disobedience in America, people might argue that Romans 13 commands us to obey the governing authorities. In fact, many even claim this nation was founded in disobedience to God solely because of the Romans 13 scripture. Romans 13, verse 1 through 2, specifically states, "Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinances of God." The word authority in the Greek means ability, freedom, liberty, right, etc. What is the governing authority, though? It's God's law, and God has indeed established all authority, the greatest of which being the individual's internal governing authority by the Holy Spirit. Therefore, the only legitimate governing authority comes from the consent of the governed. When rulers are evil, manipulative, and act contrary to God's word, they are unfit to rule over a free people. Simply put, all people are to obey God's established ordinances, and authorities in ruling positions must follow under the subjection of God's commands. The true governing authorities in the U.S. are the people, as it clearly states in the preamble of the Constitution. If we do not oppose the ruling of leaders who disregard God's commands, we violate the command to serve no other God. To obey tyranny is to worship government over our God. Just because God established government doesn't mean he approves of all of its various forms. We know this because he has raised armies to fight against tyranny on many occasions. That being said, when a government is leading its people to disobey God, civil disobedience is necessary. There are times in the course of human events where civil disobedience was necessary in order to be subject to God rather than government. In such times, the people were justified in their disobedience because they were not opposing the institution of government, they were opposing the power hungry beast which the institution granted to them had become. A wonderful analogy given for times such as this can be found in a letter drafted by Thomas Jefferson. In it, he wrote, "What country can preserve its liberties if their rulers are not warned from time to time that their people reserve the spirit of resistance? He went on to say that the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. As the previous quote suggested, a cause as worthy as liberty is worth the opposition to tyranny, and it's most certainly worth our lives and sacred honor. As citizens of both America and heaven, it is our duty to secure the blessing of liberty to ourselves and the generations to come. The liberty experienced by our children and our children's children will be determined by how effectively we take up our responsibilities as stewards over a free nation in our current day and age. Active participation through civic engagement, self education, and the education of our youth is of the most importance if we are to secure our God given rights. And as the wickedness of men continues to rage and run rampant in the world, there can even be a need to discern the necessity for a stand against tyrannical regimes for the sake of freedom. After all, when our posterity cannot attest to the blessing of freedom, there will be no one else to blame but ourselves. That concludes our episode for today. If you haven't already done so, please check out the other 2 episodes that preceded this one, all of which can be found under the episode section in whichever streaming service you're using. I hope you've enjoyed listening, and I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support. If you'd like to stay up to date with the podcast, please go ahead and follow me on Instagram. My username will be linked in the description along with all of the other documents and information that I quoted in this episode. The next episode of Rooted to Truth will be set to release on March 28th, so please stay tuned for that. I pray you have a wonderful week, and God bless.